The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And 3, 2, 1. We're live. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is our conversation, how to use video for L&D and remote work. I'm so excited you've all joined us today. A few introductions. I'm Nick Liebman, head of content here at Powtoon. Joining me today on the line is Daniel Nathan, head of customer success. Daniel, say hello. Are you there? Are you online?
I'm here, guys. Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, Dan
Excellent.
Nathan here. I run customer success at Powtoon, based currently out of our London HQ, or actually based out of my London home currently. So yeah, welcome, guys.
Excellent. Wonderful. So glad to have you. And all of you, we had over 1,950 people register for this webinar, which I'm totally bowled over about. So please give us a shout out. Tell us your name. Tell us where you're joining us from today, and tell us what are your remote working struggles. Are you an L&D professional? What have been your challenges delivering learning and development in a remote work setting? Let us know. That also helps us know that you can see our screen and that you can hear our voices and all of that good stuff. Oh, look, we've already got people chiming in. We've got Ernst here from Holland. Hello, Ernst. Happy to have you. Let's see. We've got, sorry, just making my screen a little bit bigger there so I can see everything. Reina is joining us from Tijuana, Mexico. We've got Vesna joining us from Croatia. We've got Edgardo from Puerto Rico. Pritesh is joining us from India. Wow, this is amazing. We've got Patricia from Ecuador. Desiree from Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome, Desiree. Randall from Kansas City. We've got, let's see here, also another Nick. Nick from Liphook, England. Welcome, Nick. And we've got Paulo from Portugal. We've got, let's see here, Joy from Manila. We've got people from all over the world joining us. Elizabeth, who is joining us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome. Let's see here. A few others. You guys, there's so many people chiming in. I don't want to waste too much time on that. I'm so grateful that you guys are with us. And I do want to just jump in to tell you guys what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to zoom out and get just the context and the overall scale of what's going on right now with COVID-19 and remote work. We're going to zoom in with our special guest today, L&D consultant, learning technologies expert, John Helmer, who will be joining us in just a minute. And we're going to take a look at some videos you can make today, videos you can start working on to implement video in your L&D strategy. Plus, stick with us to the end. We will be answering your questions live. In fact, Dan Nathan is going to be keeping an eye on the questions while we're rolling here, and he's going to pick any of the ones that are relevant here for everybody. Also, try and answer as many of those as we can as we get there. But first, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic is reshaping how the whole world works. We have industries at a standstill, virtually the entire human population on some form of lockdown. And the question is, what does this mean for companies and professionals? We have a number of companies that are trying to execute some kind of pivot, right? Either they're in hospitality, they're in some industry that is being limited or shut down. So you've got examples like Doubletree Hotels, who have had a reputation for these delicious chocolate chip cookies in their continental breakfast. Well, now they've released the recipe, right? To stay top of mind, to stay connected with their customers, even if they can't be putting them up for the night, at least they can share a little piece of their brand and their identity with them. Or examples like this that are really inspiring when an industry, say you're in food and beverage, like this brewery in Monterey, California, they transitioned to be able to create more hand sanitizer for their community because that was a particular shortage they were facing. And as Dan Nathan mentioned, Powtoon, we've been working remotely now for a number of weeks. I'm sure many of you have been working remotely for quite a while here. And this shift to remote work is what most of the companies that are still operating are dealing with. And we've been at this long enough now to get a little bit of data. This is from a study that Waveform did of coronavirus and remote work, April 2020. And there's good news and there's bad news. 57.7% of US workers are new to remote work. So that's a huge percentage of the workforce doing something for the very first time. But good news, more than 60% prefer working from home, right? None of that commute, none of all of the difficulties, and you can be home if you need to unplug for a minute, and you're there in a comfortable space. But it's not all good news, right? We've got over a third of people are reporting that they are actually less productive outside the office. And this was this is a stat from the United States, but I know that it's probably many, many more millions if you extend this to other countries. 10 million people in the United States are suffering daily internet connectivity issues. And I know that that's been something I've struggled with as well. So if you're not struggling with your internet, if you're not drowning in notifications or being distracted by your kids or failing to remember whether you work at home or live at work, uh, this remote working thing is proving to be a challenge for many people. Oh, and by the way, digital transformation, the pressure is on. Gartner has revealed CFOs, 74% intend to shift some employees to remote work permanently. And all of a sudden, it kind of seems like it's coronavirus that's really pushing forward digital transformation in companies around the world. I want to just turn quickly back. Dan Nathan, if you could flip your mic on for me, please. What are Powtoon users saying? What are we hearing from people using Powtoon to create video and visual communications for their company? What are they saying about the switch to remote work, the coronavirus shutdown? How is it impacting them?
All right, thank you, Nick. Yeah, so we've been hearing lots of stories, lots of tales from our Powtoon tribe particularly in the last few weeks, and more particularly so, lots of our newest users who've joined us probably since the advent of COVID-19. And we've been listening to them and understanding how they've been able to transition to this new remote working phenomenon. And it is a phenomenon because we're seeing unprecedented levels of remote working. You and I are working, everyone probably on this call, I imagine, is working from home. So we've been speaking to some of our newest customers, some of which, as I say, have joined Powtoon in the last few weeks. And one of the things that's really interesting is the reasons they've picked up video communication, or Powtoon in particular. And what I'm hearing is the demand for video content and video comms. The demand has risen exponentially. Video is no longer and can no longer be nice to have. It's a must have, okay? Because what we're hearing is colleagues and employees are miles away from each other, sometimes in some cases hundreds of miles away from each other. And this is having a gigantic effect on things like learning and development in particular, okay? No longer can you attend classroom-based learning. You can't sit next to a colleague anymore and be explained a new process. You have to communicate digitally. And as we know, the power of video is really as king with digital communication. So in some ways, COVID-19 has probably been the biggest catalyst for transforming video comms that we've ever known. Companies are ramping up, and indeed must ramp up their video communications. One of the things we've also been hearing now is that video is becoming more than ever centric to a company's communication strategy, and budget is now being more readily available and more readily allocated to video, and in particular towards video creation suites such as Powtoon, which are being deemed to be more cost effective than outsourcing your video content. So companies are redefining their entire video communication or their entire communication strategy towards a more, I would say, a more video rich strategy, which will endure and will become the norm long after this pandemic is behind us. You know, video is here to stay, and embrace it, guys, you know, so your company doesn't get left behind. And one of the things, something else I found one of the most interesting things that I've been listening to from our customers, and it's in fact, it's something that Powtoon itself has experienced. And with the advent of this global pandemic, not only are working processes and policies changing, but companies are seeing a huge shift in some cases of an entire company culture. Remote working is no longer seen by employees or by employers as an easy day off, or a day you can sort of hide under the duvet and pretend to work. Remote working is now a core centric part of a company's operations and attitudes. People's hands are being forced towards it, and for this reason I do feel and we do understand that remote working will be here long after COVID-19 have gone. And I think something else that, in fact, Nick alluded to it very earlier. Working, from home has its own issues. Okay, you have, of course, the advantage of not having to travel, not having to commute, but people do struggle to focus sometimes from home. Let's be honest, there are problems, there are downsides sometimes to remote working. People can get distracted easily. If you're working parents, you have to juggle the impossible task of looking after children during work. There's no nursery, no daycare, no schools. There's no clear defined line, particularly for parents, between work and personal life. There's no such thing as 9 to 5 anymore. So what we've been seeing as a result of this is forward-thinking HR managers, forward-thinking HR directors embracing the power of video more than ever to help guide employees as to how best to manage these situations. We've seen some incredible video content. For anyone who actually joined us a couple of weeks ago on our last webinar, we had Henkel on, a manufacturing company from Germany, one of Europe's largest, showing us how they've created a COVID-19 video using Powtoon, and they've sent it to tens of thousands of employees. It's about washing your hands and keeping safe social distance and that type of thing. I've seen other companies, Pepsi, for example, sending Powtoons to their employees about how to manage stress from working home, mindfulness videos, this type of thing. So we're really seeing HR departments, not just L&D now, but HR departments are reaching out to their employees to help guide them through this process of working from home. And I really recommend you guys check out Powtoon, in particular, some of the incredible templates that we've created, COVID-19 templates, mindfulness videos that you can send to your colleagues and employees and family even, as well as remote working tips and tricks. So please, guys, check these templates out when you can.
Good stuff, Dan, Nathan. Yes, and we're going to actually get into a little bit of that later. And I love, it's definitely true. We're seeing this a demand for video and visual communications happen with HR, internal communications, and also learning and development, which of course is why we're all here today and why our guest is joining us today. I am very, very honored to introduce John Helmer. He is an L&D consultant, learning technologies expert, and host of the Learning Hack podcast. John, welcome. John, are you there?
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
Nick.
There we go. Welcome. Please tell us.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Wonderful. I'm so glad you're joining us. Let us know a little bit about your background. How did you land where you are today?
I'm still scratching my head about that. I've been in learning technologies for 20 years. Before that, I had a career in performing arts, in a band. We had a top 10 single, been a street busker in a busking group that led on, eventually became Stomp. But for the last 20 years, I've been in learning tech, and for 10 years before that in marketing. Most of my work in learning technologies has been working for e-learning companies. I've worked for a number of those. So I've mostly been on the vendor side, on thought leadership campaigns, writing and editing blogs about learning tech, making videos, and even editing a 6-page magazine, which went out monthly. And most of that work, what it was about was explaining the vendors to their clients and their technology products and what they could do to their clients, and vice versa, and getting people together in rooms to discuss their thought leadership dinners, as we rather grandly called them. And this led very naturally to me starting up an independent podcast of my own called The Learning Hack, where I just get to talk to all the people in learning technologies I think are the most interesting, have something to say, and just ask them questions and listen. So kind of boots on the other foot now. I now have to say some stuff, so ask me some questions.
Excellent. That's a really great introduction, and I can't wait to dive right in here. So one, how is COVID-19 affecting learning professionals?
Okay, a lot of this is anecdotal, but in a general way, what I've seen since the beginning of the lockdown, since it really came into place, and it's worth saying that everybody is on a different rhythm here in different countries. For some people, this would have gone on for weeks, months. Other people might be quite new to it. But in a general way, what I'm seeing is everybody in the companies that are still operating, in other words, if you're an airline or a holiday company, you're probably mothballed at the moment and on furlough. But if you're a knowledge worker and you can work from home easily enough, then you're still working. And what I'm seeing is everybody in those companies scrambling to get their normal working practices online. But it's not their normal working practices, of course. It's been called a new normal. It's been called a new abnormal. And we're all slowly getting used to it. There's a lot to learn and a lot we have to get going quickly. So anecdotally, I could back up what Dan was saying there, that all the vendor companies I've spoken to since the crisis first started, and I've spoken to quite a few of them, have experienced an immediate surge of new inquiries from people who need to get their training online really quickly. There's a lot of training that needs to be done. Large organizations do stacks of it. I mean, a lot of them have a lot of compliance to do, especially in industries like pharma and financial services and so on. And that doesn't stop. And then there's all the other stuff, the regular work of the L&D department, which is inducting new people, plugging skills gaps, supporting people in new job roles, progressing their skills and knowledge to take them on to the next step, all the performance support style stuff, getting people information quickly and in a timely fashion about how to do the job that they're doing today better, and also at the same time developing. It's a lot, and it has to be taken online if it isn't there already. So to give you an idea of the scale of the task, in 2019, according to Training Magazine, some 62% of training was delivered online in large organizations. So all the rest, anything that has a face-to-face component now has to go online or it doesn't get done. Not easy. Now, granted, some of that stuff will be postponed, but you're looking at potentially up to around 40% of all the training that people do having suddenly to go online if they're going to continue operating. And if you add to that the fact that there's a load of new stuff about training people, messaging to them about the new ways of working, it's a massive amount for L&D to do in a short space of time. So while the media is full of articles and blogs saying, oh, what are we going to do with all this spare time now we've got on our hands? Shall we write novels? Shall we plant gardens? Well, I don't see any of that. I see a lot of people who are trying very hard to do two big jobs at once to adjust to a totally unprecedented situation where the whole business is suddenly remote working, and at the same time take up to 40% of their training online. So L&D has got a real job on its hands for the most part.
Yeah, I mean that it could be overwhelming, definitely. But are there positives? Are there any positives to come out of the current crisis?
Well, obviously it's good for the people on the vendor side who might have thought initially, oh my God, you know, half our client list is going to disappear, because their businesses by and large seem to be holding up. It's good in other ways in that people are learning new skills. Some people are experiencing the joys of working from home and seeing more of their families, and the necessity of having a lock on their study door perhaps as well. So there are massive upsides to it. You'll see that in certain companies where people have been delaying moving certain things to digital because of lack of budget, focus, time, or mental bandwidth, now they've got a compelling driver to do it at last. So if you're the person in the company who's wanted to take stuff online, you know, here at last you've got a driver to do a lot of stuff that you haven't been able to do before, but you know, the bad side being you've got to do it very quickly. Businesses won't want to fall behind during this period of lockdown. You know, I could trot out a lot of graphs to show you how important knowledge is to any business's competitiveness in this day and age. We kind of all know that. So you're not going to want to fall behind. Companies will want to come back with all guns blazing once the restrictions are lifted. Okay, things may be a bit less active during this period for some. Even there's an opportunity to do learning perhaps that you always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity or the driver to do before, or the cash. Another potential upside for we in the learning profession is that a lot of the training that goes online in the next few months will likely never go back to face-to-face delivery, because, you know, once your finance department has a look at the books, and although they may be taking some severe hits, they might also notice that a lot of the training delivery has saved a lot of money on what they were doing before. So there's going to be a good business case for keeping a lot of that stuff online. New tracks will have laid down, people have put infrastructure in place. You know, you're seeing this already, because people aren't only after content, some people need learning platforms to serve that content. So it involves building or enlarging an existing infrastructure for online learning, adopting and mastering new tools. There's going to be a lot of people who suddenly know how to do virtual classroom who perhaps had been holding back from that. There'll be the cost savings, new capabilities, and all of that could be leveraged for the future. So a lot of stuff won't necessarily come back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know that my aunt and uncle hosted a Zoom over the holiday. So I mean, lots of people are picking up new digital skills, and that's no less true in L&D for sure. Uh, will this hiatus ultimately be good for the future of L&D?
Possibly like everything else, there'll be good things and bad things, but largely, actually, I say this rather quietly because it's a terrible crisis and lives are being lost and so on. But on balance, will probably be a good thing for L&D, um, or for the people interested in digital in L&D. But I want to caveat that a bit. There's a big concern I hear, mainly coming from innovators in L&D, and this is people I speak to who are at the front end of the adoption curve, if you like, the innovators, the early adopters, and the early majority, if you know all about that adoption curve. And what they're seeing is that people in a hurry to get online are lurching towards a very traditional model of online learning. To put it crudely, off-the-shelf e-learning modules plus LMS. Now, people who might be a bit new to learning technologies or just haven't been paying attention over the last few years might have missed the fact that the world has moved on from that model. Some people might be surprised to hear, for instance, around 80% of the learning content used by organization now is actually video. So where it used to be self-paced modules of e-learning content, people are have been for several years now using a lot more video. There's been an explosion of content types as well as video, and new ways of serving that content to learners with learning experience platforms, which now use artificial intelligence to serve content up to the learners. We've had micro-learning, learner-generated content, social learning, informal learning, 70-20-10, all of this. It's a different picture from what it was, but the people who are rushing to get stuff online quickly are tending, we're seeing, to want to use a very old-fashioned model of LMS plus off-the-shelf courses. Learning content is a lot more diverse now. It's more instantly available in smaller chunks. You can serve it in the flow of work. And video is playing a really dominant role in that. So things have changed, and there is a danger that that change doesn't necessarily get communicated because of the speed at which people are having to move. But as I said, video is playing a really dominant role.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. So then, if video's playing that dominant role, talk to us about a few of the ways, and I've got them already lined up here for you. Talk us through a few of the ways that video is being deployed in learning and development.
Okay, so one thing we'll have seen a lot of is first person to camera. UGC stands for user generated content. That's become a big thing because people realize that you can get the SMEs, the experts in particular knowledge within an organization, just to get it down on camera in a first person video and serve that up through a learning platform. And that's not only a cheap way of generated content, but a great way of leveraging the knowledge that's already within your organization. So there are a lot of video sharing platforms. One of the first learning experience platforms, Fuse, was basically a video sharing platform. And through tools like StoryTagger, we've become very much used to seeing that first person to camera kind of delivery. So that is a form of video that has come about the last few years and now is very popular. Then people will be more used to the explainer form of video, and Powtoon will of course immediately leap to mind there. Explainers are used all over the place, not only for learning, also for comms, and in that whole big area now of learning that shades over into comms. I was at a conference the other day, and well, the other day, obviously before the lockdown, before Christmas, and head of learning development was saying, really frankly, hand on heart, about 60% of my work nowadays is comms rather than strictly learning. It's about getting information across really quickly, explaining a process, and a short explainer is ideal to do that. It's become quite usual to front end an e-learning module nowadays with a brief explainer, which is a kind of welcome attention getter at the beginning of a course. And explainers have proved to be an extremely flexible way of using video in all sorts of learning contexts. So for instance, you might have a first person to camera piece, but you might drop in a little explainer that you've made yourself perhaps. or you've got off the shelf, or that your company has produced elsewhere, to kind of lighten the load so people don't have to spend half an hour staring at your nostril hairs. To cover the comms side of things there. There have been some interesting technological developments in the use of video. Interactive video has become much bigger in the last few years. It's not a new thing. I remember back in 2003, there was some interactive video that the company I was working for then, Epic, produced for a government department about interview techniques, which was highly effective. Even in the kind of DVD era, interactive videos would be interactive because you'd have a bit where you'd stop and have a group discussion or whatever. But now interactivity is so much easier, and you can have branching with video, that it's become a really powerful part of the toolkit. And it's possible to do this either recording little lumps of video and then putting them together and having a platform deliver that in a branched interactive way, or else authoring the whole thing interactively. Something else that's coming into that in a similar way is using artificial intelligence to deliver and sequence little chunks of video, little bits of micro-learning, if you like. And there was a recent product called Total Recall, by a guy called Donald Clark, who I interviewed for my podcast yesterday. That'll be appearing in May.
Ooh.
Who's done this really interesting thing with AI serving up little bits of video. Another thing we had for ages was virtual classroom. And now the online meeting, Zoom has been top of the pops as far as Google searches have gone for the last few weeks, and we've all kind of got used to that. We've seen the Zoom memes and everything. It's entered the culture. People who thought that virtual classroom was something really quite exotic that you might have to go on a training course to learn how to do, are beginning to realize exactly how that works, and it's permeating our lives. So there again is another form of video. And with things like Zoom, you can have small team meetings, you can have meetings with 2 and 3 people, or you can take it up to huge events with mass audiences. So a company can use it for company briefings and so on, or for team briefings, or briefing everybody in the sales force. A lot of events and conferences are now going online, and we'll see that they mix various of the forms of video here. You'll have first person camera, you'll have a kind of plenary Zoom meeting, if you like, and you might have little bits of explainers put into that. So video is not one thing, it's many things nowadays. I would say one thing though is that video, there's a tendency to ramble, I think, with first person video, and one of the real advantages of the explainer form is that you can think about something and compress something from 60 minutes down into 6 minutes. And science shows that 6 minutes is about the best you can get for attention span to watch a video. And I'm always reminded of something that Salman Rushdie, the novelist, said that he learned in his days as an advertising copywriter when he worked in a West End advertising agency, which I'd done myself at one point. He said what writing copy taught him, when you're trying to distill something down to 3 or 4 words, is compression adds force. And that's something really worth thinking, I think, with relation to video as well. So, Nick, I'm going to let you move on now, because otherwise I'll end up rambling myself.
No problem. And I think, what's really amazing about this is we dive into how video is being implemented for L&D. We see it's not one thing, just like you said. This might be, I think that learning and development professionals are required to create the most diverse kinds of video content. And this is, really, this is just scratching the surface. And not only that, but as I think more and more and more of these changes we're experiencing become the new normal, the new abnormal becomes normal, then more and more people are going to have these skills, and more fields are going to require that people be able to be competent in putting together a face-to-camera video, being able to deliver an explainer, being able to manage an online live event with video, being able to use a presentation that you might have used in person, but then use it for, say, a webinar like we're doing right now. But the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the lightning round. This is where we can go through a few of the most valuable learning and development video templates we've got on the Powtoon platform. And hopefully these are also a bit of inspiration for you. So first, training invite. It's all well and good to hold training and to send a calendar invite and then a Slack notification and then an email, and maybe hopefully everybody's going to sign up. But if you send a video, you'll have that much better chance of getting people excited for the value that they're going to get out of your training. You'll get higher attendance and hopefully also higher accuracy rates and all that good stuff from people engaging in your training. So this just very, very easy template. It's available on our platform, and it's also easy to customize. An invitation to training could easily become an invitation to a one-on-one meeting or an invitation to just about anything you need it for. Our next template here, self-care. And this is, I think we've all sort of run into this as we've transitioned to working from home. How do we, those little things we used to do, maybe at lunch you'd take a walk around around the block by the office. Now you don't have that option anymore. Maybe the yoga class at the that your company would do once a week was a core part of your own physical self-care, and now you need to replace that. Or any other kind of short soft skill training or reminder that you would want to deliver to your colleagues. You can do that with this video template. Okay, John mentioned the explainer. This is only one of many, many, many explainer templates we have on the Powtoon platform. This is the 8 simple steps, which is great for anything that's got, 8 steps, or you could add steps or remove steps, but anything where you're going through first do this, then do that, explaining a process to someone like that. This is a wonderful explainer. I also just will mention we've got the Meet Jane explainer, we've got the whiteboard explainer, and any and all of these video templates, you can take them, you can customize them, add your own colors, swap in a character, put in your own images, put in your own video content, all that kind of stuff. And also, John mentioned the need to align your team, to set goals together. This is true between an individual and their manager, across a team, across a department, or even across a company. So being able to clearly lay out your goals and expectations, where you're headed as a team or as a company in video has massive, massive value, especially when we can't all just be sitting in the same room anymore, just sort of getting a whiff of which direction we're going in because we're all in the same room. No, now we have to be completely aligned. We need to communicate, and we need to do it visually so it makes an impact. And of course, 5 tips for remote working. This is one that Dan mentioned this earlier, that we've had clients clamoring for this and have been working with this template and putting it out so that their employees can get set up quickly working from home. They can make their workspace. They can get all of the resources they need. They know who to contact in their organization if they have any problems. And again, this could be adapted to just about any other situation where you'd want to provide tips to your employees. And a bonus, because it's L&D, and John mentioned all of those in-person classroom trainings that are going to go online and never come back to the classroom. Well, if you've got a lecture, if you've got a lesson that you've given that you just love and you know how to do it live, but you want to create a video summary of it so that it can live in video form, we've got the lecture summary video template available for you in Powtoon. Optimized, professionally designed, and ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the question and answer period. Very, very excited for this. I want to ask John to flip your mic back on. Dan, Nathan, if you'd be so kind as to flip your microphone back on. And any of you, ladies and gentlemen, who are joining us, if you have a question about how to implement video with your L&D strategy, if you have a question for Dan, Nathan, if you have a question for me, or if you have a question for our panelist, John Helmer, please, now is the time. Let them rip. And Dan, did you see any of those along the way there that we think we might start with? Dan, Nathan, go ahead if you're ready.
We've got Sam here who's for John.
Sorry, Dan, just having a little connectivity issue there. If you could just start that sentence one more time. Thanks so much. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that,
We've got
ladies.
a question
Oh, there we go. Dan, you're back.
for John, but answered it. Some problem. He's struck stuff. Okay. Connection issues, Nick. Just let me know.
But I heard that last sentence. That was the first one I heard. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, having a little difficulty in
We're breaking up.
in the audio here.
How do you mix of audio?
Yeah, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just having a little hard time hearing Dan Nathan, so I'm not sure which of these questions he pulled out for us. But maybe he could just drop that into the chat box just to the organizers, so I can take a look and read it off. Might be a good option for us here. I appreciate everyone's patience while we deal with these technical issues.
Nick, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great stuff. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we had a question from Sam. He says, how do you hit the right mix of audio, video, and voiceover in his Powtoons? It seems Sam is struggling with hitting the right notes when audio, video, and voiceover. Any tips you yourself or John? Any tips you can give here?
Well, I'm happy to chime in. I create videos with voiceover on a fairly regular basis. And I find that it's definitely best. One of the things you can do on the Powtoon platform is set the relative volume of your audio track and your voiceover track. So I would definitely recommend trying that out and being sure that you can still hear everything the voiceover is saying. One other thing I might mention about voiceover, you're going to want to put your most important text. You want to emphasize your most important points in text on the screen, nice big letters. So if I have a sentence in my voiceover that says, according to statistics, 80% of video is that being, or 80% of training content is being delivered via video in corporations, 80% in video, nice and big in text, that will show up right when the voiceover is saying that. That's also a great way to emphasize visually what you're also saying in the audio. I hope that is helpful. John, did you have a comment about that, or at least anything about how in learning and development, how people tend to treat voiceovers or soundtracks or things like that?
Just to say that, just to say that if you're doing presenting to camera, you've got two things to think about. One is, how you look, and the other one is exactly what you're saying, and it's enormously pressured. I found that it's probably best to put most of what you're going to say into voiceover and then illustrate it with images, because then you can concentrate on getting the voice right, speaking clearly and legibly, and all the rest of it. And the bits that you do to camera probably are the bits where you more need to bang home a point with emotion, because people really relate to faces speaking to them. But what that really does, and video does really well, is to convey a kind of emotional and effective context for something. Whereas in other mode, you're more getting the balance between those things, between emotion and information transfer, is really important in learning. There's an awful lot that could be said about that. I won't go on about it too much, but there are some links which I could send on if anybody is interested.
Excellent. I saw also here someone was just asking about the optimal length.
Good stuff. I have
go ahead.
Question actually.
Go ahead, Dan. My mistake. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the issue asking us about voiceovers using Powtoon. It asked if we orders one by slide. Indeed, to use slide by inside Powtoon, or you need to make it easier to change is for a 2-minute by slide version. Always
So I do thank everybody for your patience while we grapple with some of these technical difficulties, and do apologize for that sound breaking up there. I'm not entirely sure what the question was, but I saw in here that we had a question about the optimal length for video, and I just wanted to chime in on that one. I know that as John mentioned earlier in his section, that around 6 minutes, in length is about the maximum length you can expect to be able to keep someone's attention. And that's generally, I think, in the context of a training video where they're already basically on board. They want to watch this, they need the skills, or they're being asked or requested to watch that video content. If you're, for instance, just doing a quick invitation or some of those other video templates we talked about, I would recommend keeping that as short and sweet as possible. People's time is limited, and so and also, as John said, to limit, to compress, is to make something more powerful. So 6 minutes at the long end, but the more succinct and more direct you can be, always, that's better. Okay. Any other
And if I can
thoughts? Go ahead.
chime in there, Nick.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, if I could chime in there, there are research papers that back up that 6 minutes limit. Here I'm going by Donald Clark, says on his blog, he wrote an article about video. So the sources that minutes is about attention.
Excellent. Wonderful. So yeah, for those, if that broke up for folks, Don Clark is the gentleman he was mentioning who's done the research into this, and he's also an upcoming guest on the Learning Hack podcast. So recommend you guys check that out. I want to just, I know that we're having a little bit of a technical issue here, so I want to bring this back with one last question here. This is coming from Leslie. And this is what she's asking about: providing L&D solutions to people in over 100 countries. She's using Powtoon to do this, and she has this particular issue about the VTT captioning file, adding that to a Powtoon so she can provide multiple language captions to the videos. So Leslie, in answer to that question, I believe on the Powtoon side, that capability is not available yet. However, which with your LMS or LXP, you may have the opportunity to provide that information there. For instance, we post a lot of things on YouTube. If you're using YouTube as your video platform, YouTube has the ability to upload those VTT files directly there. I don't know if, John, if you have a recommendation or anything to say about captioning and translating training content?
I need to say that my podcast is listened to in 60 countries, but I'm afraid, being quite a cottage operation, we only put subtitles out in English. But I've used a platform called Subtitle, which does subtitling by AI, and then you correct it. I would recommend correcting it. On YouTube, they will do some automatic subtitling, closed captions, but it's worth going in and editing that because AI isn't that advanced that it can get those little nuances right, so they're often quite wrong. So that would be my 2 apith on that.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, I appreciate everyone's patience. I do apologize for the technical issues we were having there, but I also do want to thank very much Dan Nathan, my co-organizer, and our special guest John Helmer. If you guys want to stay in touch with John, he's on LinkedIn, he's on Twitter at John Helmer. John, anything else you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
Just I'd like to thank Powtoons for their support of the podcast and all the people who listen in. And I'd recommend anyone to give a listen. Not necessarily because I'm so fascinating, but the guests that I come on just have so much to say. Learning is an industry where people love to talk, they love to debate, they love to think. And I think that makes it a particularly inspiring piece of business, of the business network to be operating in. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And ladies and gentlemen, you will receive via email tomorrow a link to a replay of this session so that you can watch it on demand whenever and wherever you want to. You will receive a link to our guide to remote working where you can find more templates, articles, tips, all sorts of resources. And that's a living document. We're adding stuff to it as it becomes ready, as we're learning, as we're all learning together what this massive work from home experiment is all about. And you'll also receive a link to the Learning Hack podcast, so you can be sure that you listen and add it to whichever podcast platforms you use to listen. I do also want to thank all of you, all of our listeners, everyone who registered, so many people. It was really, really great, and all of the chats coming in. We hope to get back to any one of you individually if there was something, a particular question you had there that we didn't get to. And I thank you all for your patience. Please remember, stay healthy, stay learning, and stay awesome. Have a great week, everyone.